Anyone who's been paying the slightest bit of attention to U.S. politics over the course of the past half-century could have told you a Joe Biden presidency was a really, really bad idea. Why? Because Joe Biden is a dull, witless, unexceptional moron. A bumbling buffoon who steps on his own dick each time he puts one foot in front of the other. A mewling moron whose list of gaffes and errors in judgment is longer than Rip Van Winkle's beard. All it took was 116,000 votes for Joe Biden, whose previous experience amounted to 2 years as a city councilman, to become a U.S. Senator from the state of Delaware. He was re-elected to that office 5 times, and his all-time highest vote total was 165,000. In fact, if you add up all 6 of his victories, you know what the total number is? 771,397 votes. To put that number in perspective, Joe Biden won 6 Senate terms with the same number of votes it took for Comrade Bill de Blasio to get elected mayor of New York City 1 time. We've talked at great length previously about the number of things Joe Biden has been wrong about during his long and thoroughly undistinguished career in national politics. When he first arrived in the Senate as a fresh-faced 30-year-old back in January of 1973, 17 months before the birth of your host, he styled himself as an unreconstructed Southern segregationist, who was all too happy to pal around with other Southern segregationists, to be the young protege of the Deep South Democrat senators who had staunchly opposed the Civil Rights Act only 8 years previously. And he tried to earn his segregationist street cred by positioning himself as a strong opponent of school busing, which was a bad policy that damn well should have been opposed. There were a lot of good and proper reasons why it should have been opposed, but Joe, he wanted to make sure everybody knew the reason why he opposed it was because he was a good old-fashioned racist Southern Democrat. Because, damn it, said Joe Biden, the white parents in my state, they don't want a bunch of Negro kids showing up and turning their schools into a racial jungle. That is a direct quote, and you can go watch the video for yourself if you think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. Now, if you're not familiar with these more unsavory aspects of Joe's track record, here's where you might find yourself asking, but wait, if this guy was such an openly racist senator, why did Barack Obama, history's first sort of black presidential nominee, decide to pluck this idiot off the scrap heap of obscurity to be his running mate in 2008? Well, that's exactly why he did it. Because remember the old canard about dog whistles to racists? We hear it a lot from our friends in the fake performance art news media. And of course, they only ever accuse Republicans of doing it. But when Obama picked Joe Biden for his running mate in 2008, it was an actual honest-to-God dog whistle to racists. It was the Democrat Party's way of saying, calm down, folks. There's no need to be afraid of this kind of black dude with the foreign-sounding name, because look, he picked the most notoriously racist senator of the last 35 years to be his wingman. And make no mistake, it wasn't just in the early 1970s that Senator Joe Biden made a habit of being an obnoxious racist sack of shit in public for the whole country to see. Because he was the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee when President George H.W. Bush nominated Judge Clarence Thomas as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court in 1991. Now, if you're too young to remember those hearings, or if you're old enough to remember but your recollection has faded, I do highly recommend you go back and watch them, because it is some pretty shocking stuff at times. Joe Biden and Teddy Kennedy sitting there shoulder to shoulder, smirking at each other about the nerve of this black guy who clearly does not know his place, fully confident that they'll be able not only to derail his nomination, but also to utterly ruin his life and wreck his career. After a full week of some of the most disgusting character assassination and thinly veiled racist abuse that was ever witnessed in the halls of Congress in the second half of the 20th century, a righteously indignant Judge Thomas, when asked by Chairman Biden if he wished to deliver any closing remarks, said the following, and he was looking right at Joe the entire time. Quote, "Senator, I would like to start by saying unequivocally, categorically, that I deny each and every single allegation against me today that suggested in any way that I had conversations of a sexual nature or about pornographic material with Anita Hill, that I ever attempted to date her, that I ever had any personal sexual interest in her, or that I in any way ever harassed her. And second, and I think more important point, I think that today is a travesty. I think it is disgusting. I think that this hearing should never occur in America. This is a case in which this sleaze, this dirt, was searched for by staffers of members of this committee, was then leaked to the media, and this committee and this body validated it and displayed it at prime time over our entire nation. How would any member of this committee, any person in this room, any person in this country would like sleaze about him or her said in this fashion? Or this dirt dredged up, and this gossip, and these lies displayed in this manner? How would any person like it? The Supreme Court is not worth it. No job is worth it. I am not here for that. I am here for my name, my family, my life, and my integrity. I think something is dreadfully wrong with this country when any person in this free country would be subjected to this. This is not a closed room. There was an FBI investigation. This is not an opportunity to talk about difficult family matters in private in a closed environment. This is a circus. It is a national disgrace. And from my standpoint as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a member of the U.S. Senate, rather than hung from a tree. End quote. If you thought the antics of the Democrats during the Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett confirmation hearings were some sort of new or recent development, they were not. They were operating from a well-worn playbook, some of whose contents were written by Senator Joe Biden himself. And I'm done with Senator Joe Biden for right now, but I have much more to say tonight about the national disgrace that is President Joe Biden. So take us home, Jim Eagle. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we dole out punishments to petty criminals that the Taliban would deem cruel and barbaric. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. Happy Friday. I am your eponymous host and humble servant, and we need to talk about two things that have transpired in the life of President Joe Biden since last we convened on Wednesday night. First, there was the embarrassing shit show of an interview that he did with George Stephanopoulos for ABC News, and second was the embarrassing shit show of a prepared statement / fake press conference for which the president bravely and nobly interrupted his previously scheduled vacation. Now, it's obvious enough that it doesn't need to be spelled out, but let's spell it out anyway. The corpse of Joe Biden would not be the president right now, except for the concerted, coordinated, damn near heroic efforts of the fake performance art news media and the big tech oligarchs who issue their marching orders and who effectively serve as the editorial board of what passes for American journalism in the third decade of the 21st century. If the fake news media had covered the 2020 election in any sort of remotely objective manner, hell, even if they had just dialed back their pro-Democrat bias to pre-2016 levels, Joe Biden would never have won the Democratic nomination, much less the presidency. And in all likelihood, he would be residing in an assisted living facility right now, which, all things considered, is probably where he should be. This man is in such bad shape cognitively that if he were anybody else, if he was some anonymous doddering old grandfather from suburban Wilmington, Delaware, his family wouldn't allow him to drive to the pharmacy by himself to pick up his prescription. There would be serious discussions about how much longer we're going to let Grandpa live on his own. His kids would be checking prices at the local memory care facility and seeing if they could make the finances pencil out. But since the fake news media and the big tech oligarchs decided to make a devil's bargain, since they decided that Donald Trump being the president was so intolerable that it absolutely must be stopped by any means necessary, well, Grandpa, who can't go to the pharmacy by himself, is the president of these United States of America. And we have 3.5 years of this shit left to go. Even before the Afghanistan debacle of the past week, which continues to unfold, which keeps getting exponentially worse, which has been bungled just about as badly as a thing can be bungled. Even if we set that aside and pretend it doesn't exist, Joe Biden has still had what is inarguably the most disastrous opening 7 months of any presidency in U.S. history. But even though he had the fake news media fully in the tank, and the big tech oligarchs totally on board, gleefully censoring any story that might reflect badly on him or his campaign, that still was not enough to get his crusty old cadaverous ass into the Oval Office. But then, like so much manna from the heavens, came the great communist Chinese Wuhan Kung Flu coronavirus of 2019. And I'm not going to make any arguments about the legitimacy, allegedly, of the election result. Let's go ahead and assume for our present purposes that the result was totally legitimate and on the level. The virus still enabled Joe not to have to run an actual campaign. If he'd had to run an actual campaign, even all the fake news media, big tech oligarch collusion in the world would not have been enough to drag Joe across the finish line. But in the event, he got to run a version of a presidential campaign where all he had to do was shuffle out to his front yard at 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning, mumble some unintelligible crap for 6 to 8 minutes, and then call it a day. And speaking of mumbling some unintelligible crap, let's talk about the Stephanopoulos fake interview and whatever the hell that thing was at the White House today. You know, it must be nice when the fake news media are so in the tank for you and your party, so committed to doing everything in their power to make you seem lucid and cognizant and in control of your mental faculties, that you can do a sit-down interview with Bill Clinton's former press secretary, a friendly interlocutor whom you can depend on to lob nice, fat pitches right over the heart of the plate, and whenever you get cranky or confused, or you flub an answer, or come off sounding like the end-stage dementia patient you really are, you can depend on your loyal subjects at ABC News to scrub out all the bad footage and cut the thing together to make you look as good as possible. Except here's the thing. Even with all the favorably deceptive editing that the ABC News team can do, there is not enough lipstick in the world to make that pig look like anything but a damn pig. And I don't know whose idea it was to shoot Joe's face full of Botox and stick him in the tanning booth for 3 hours, but it didn't help. Because, all due respect, Mr. President, an orange, stretched-out corpse doesn't look any better than a pasty white, wrinkly corpse. I think even Donald Trump was shocked by how orange this guy looked yesterday. So even with the worst bits edited out, even with the remaining bits edited to remove most of the stammering and the long silences and the moments of dumbfounded, awkward confusion, the President of the United States came off looking like senile orange man. But somebody on the inside, either in the White House or at ABC, leaked the full transcript of the interview. And the Daily Wire managed to get hold of it. And oh my God, Joe Biden, you are such an incredibly sleazy scumbag. Because what the hell kind of a man uses his dead son as a human shield in order to avoid answering a question he doesn't want to answer? Seriously, who does that? And it's not difficult to see why they scrubbed that part out and tried to memory hole it completely, because Stephanopoulos, surprisingly, asked a reasonable question about how our military personnel who have served in Afghanistan over the past 20 years are supposed to feel about the mission ending in this way, with the United States utterly humiliated on the world stage and the Taliban stronger on the day we left than they were on the day we arrived. And the first words out of Joe's mouth are, "My deceased son, Beau." Seriously, who the hell does that? This would be bad enough on its own, but then he proceeds to forget which branch of the military Beau Biden served in, then he gets his rank wrong, then he gets confused about which foreign theater he was deployed to. In other words, he is using his dead son as a rhetorical human shield while forgetting all the relevant details of that son's military service. And just, wow. Great work, Joe. In the space of 2 or 3 sentences, you made yourself look like a shitty father, a bad president, and a demented moron, all at the same time. Evidently, Joe thought he was going to be able to do this fake interview with Stephanopoulos and then get back to his extended vacation, which had been so rudely interrupted by the American people demanding answers for one of the biggest national embarrassments of the last 100 years. So then we got the thing that happened at the White House yesterday, or today, this afternoon, where we saw the glorious return, after 7 days missing in action, of Vice President Black Masked Grim Reaper Ninja Lady. And we need to take a moment here to talk about optics, and when they're bad, and when they're really, really bad. Because I struggle to believe there's nobody on the president's staff or the vice president's staff to whom it occurred, wait, hold on a minute. The Taliban just regained power in Afghanistan due to our administration's crippling incompetence. We are right back to Afghan women being beaten in the streets for not wearing the full burqa. So, do we want to have the president addressing the nation while the female vice president looms over his shoulder, clad head to toe in black, and wearing a religious face covering? Like, nobody thought of the perverse irony of that visual image and how shockingly bad it makes this administration look? Because you seriously have got to be fucking kidding me. That's the type of thing where if it were a Saturday Night Live sketch, back when Saturday Night Live was a comedy show, it would be absolutely hilarious. A brilliant bit of comedy genius. Meanwhile, Tony Blinken, the squishy douchebag who is somehow inexplicably the Secretary of State, is looming over Joe's other shoulder, also clad in a black mask. And this man seems to permanently wear an expression on his face like he's handing his wallet over to a mugger and begging the guy not to beat him up. Like, do you want my car keys too, sir? Here you go. Please just don't hurt me. With Mike Pompeo, hell, even with Rex Tillerson, at least those guys were capable of acting like real men. How seriously is anybody supposed to take quivering Tony Blinken? This guy and the corpse of Joe Biden are supposed to strike fear in the hearts of our enemies? No wonder the Taliban are walking all over us, laughing their asses off the whole time. They've got every reason to. Now, as for the substance of the brief statement that Joe delivered today, with the two black masked angels of death looming in the background, you remember the all-female goon squad that Muammar Gaddafi used to use for his personal protection, who always wore masks and all black outfits? That's what this visual reminded me of. But I honestly wonder whether Joe actually knows he's lying about all this stuff, or if he's just reading whatever words are on the teleprompter and hoping that if he does a good enough job, they'll let him leave and go back to his vacation. Because none of the things he said are true, or even remotely close to being true. We've made great progress, he says. We've secured the airport, he says. We will get every American out who wants to get out, he says. Does this mean he's operating in the belief that there are Americans in Afghanistan who don't want to get out? Yeah, I'm sure there are a huge number of people in that cohort, Joe. Nah, it's cool. You guys just go on without us. We'll go ahead and entrust our lives to the good graces of the Taliban. Also, have you guys noticed how Joe sometimes starts arguing with the teleprompter? Like he's just reading the words on the screen as one normally does, and then he goes into one of his digressions where he stops in the middle of a sentence and starts mumbling some angry gibberish like, but look! Like he thinks the teleprompter is a person who's just said something he disagrees with. Because I really would like to think we have a president who actually takes a moment to peruse the statements he is about to deliver, but evidently we do not. And then there was my favorite part where Joe regaled us with some Common Core math. And if you haven't seen the video, I know this is going to be difficult to believe, but as God is my witness, I am not making this up. So Joe is in the middle of giving us his list of justifications for why we needed to get out of Afghanistan, and he's listing the low and high estimates for how much money the whole thing has cost us. And he says, the high estimate is $1.2 trillion, and that's over $300 million a day. Which makes one wonder, did some math challenge staffer actually write that in the script, or was Joe winging it and doing the arithmetic in his head? All things considered, is probably equally disturbing either way and unintentionally instructive as to the level of congenital idiocy we're dealing with in this administration. Now, elections have consequences. When you install an addle-brained geriatric in the presidency, those consequences can be extremely disastrous. We're watching right now just disastrous how they can be. The military calculus here was not complicated or difficult to figure out. President Trump said it himself yesterday. First, you get all your civilians out of the country. Then you get all your equipment out so it doesn't fall into the hands of the enemy. And the equipment you can't get out, you render it inoperable. Then you bomb all the bases back to the Stone Age so no one else can use them. Only then do you pull out your military personnel. But our military leaders were too busy scheduling woke diversity training classes and purging the ranks of anyone whose politics are to the right of Karl Marx to be bothered with carrying out their duties in a competent and responsible fashion. But then, competent and responsible has never been Joe Biden's style. Thanks for watching. Here's wishing everyone a delightful, edifying weekend. I will see you back here Monday. Until then, get off my lawn.